Ever been to an art gallery with your uncle and he stares at a painting on the wall for like 5 long minutes and then he says, "Why is that art?" and doesn't ever speak to you again? Today we're going to look at an example of when art might need a bit of context to answer your uncle's question. I'm Professor Lise, not really a professor, and this is Art 101, not really a class. We're here to go on a deep dive of an idea, an artwork, or a story from the art world that's controversial, inexplicable, or just plain weird. In 1989, the National Gallery of Canada made a big purchase. It was a huge painting by an American artist named Barnett Newman called Voice of Fire, painted in 1967. And the National Gallery bought it for a cool $1.8 million. And the country lost its damned mind. They drew cartoons, they said some really angry things, some of them kind of violent. Some people made their own versions of Voice of Fire for a lot less than $1.6 million. Why did they hate it so much? Let's break it down. Voice of Fire is 18 feet high, and it's made up of 3 stripes, blue, red, and blue again. So your uncle might say, this guy couldn't even use 3 colors. How long did it take to make? How much paint did he actually use? Does he think I'm an idiot? So, why is it art? Let's go back. Barnett Newman was born in 1905. He's dead now. He's seen as being part of this movement called abstract expressionism that included artists like Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, and a couple of women whose names we left off the list for about 50 years. And they were all asking questions about what painting actually was. What did it actually mean to take a brush and paint on a flat surface? To not pretend it was 3-dimensional? How could you evoke emotion or ideas through color and brushstroke and texture alone? Voice of Fire came out of these experiments. And politically, this was a fraught century. Leading into World War II, Russia and Germany and other countries had governments that controlled their artists and limited what they could paint, even creating laws around what you could put on a canvas. They introduced art movements with names like socialist realism to force artists to make paintings that served the state. And they called painters who made abstract art degenerate. So in the aftermath, when many painters fled to America, the 1950s and 60s in the States was seen as a place where artists could have freedom. They could paint whatever they wanted. They could make huge-ass abstract paintings. And abstraction could mean individuality and democracy and free will. Voice of Fire was a descendant of all of this, and it was painted for a really important show called Expo 67, held in Montreal that year. Countries had their own pavilions there, and Voice of Fire hung in America's. America was locked into the space race with Russia, and under the surface, this ideological war was playing out in the art world. So think portraits of Lenin versus massive screen prints by Andy Warhol and Voice of Fire. What does this have to do with Canada? Barnett Newman painted these 3 massive stripes to specifically fit the huge geodesic dome that was America's pavilion at Expo 67. This painting that had meant so much at the Montreal show became part of Canada's cultural legacy, a slice of the history of the time, political as well as artistic. Is this enough to convince your uncle that Voice of Fire is more than 3 tall stripes? Maybe not. Uncles are tricky. But it may be an example of why paintings like this make uncles angry, and also why sometimes an artwork is more than what it looks like. I'll see you and your uncle back here next time for more Art 101.